Welcome back, guys. This is going to be yet another short video, and in this one we are going to make the enemy deal damage to us. Alright guys, so here we can get started now adding the damage system to our enemy, and this is just the old style of tutorials again. So in order to do that, let's jump straight into my enemy script by going to scripts and opening up the enemy script. Alright, so now what we are going to do is actually start adding that. So in order to do that, what we are going to do is so I'm going to do it inside of the update method. Now first let me tell you what it's going to look like. What we are basically going to do is we are going to do essentially a distance check. So when the enemy has reached the player, we are going to do a distance check between the player and the enemy, and if that distance is within a certain threshold which will determine the enemy's range, we will deal damage to the player. So this is essentially just a it's not like a ranged attack, it's a melee attack. So in order to do that, we need to have a system for dealing damage first. Now in here, of course, we can deal damage to the enemy because we have got our health. Before I do that though, just let me add one more thing here. So after we have done this, we are going to say okay, so here when we are actually setting the health to 0, so when the health is 0, which means that now the enemy has got 0 health, which means that we need to destroy the enemy. So what I'm going to say, destroy enemy. Oh sorry, no, not enemy, game object. So we are destroying the enemy when the health reaches 0, which means that the enemy will essentially die when its health reaches 0. Just to test it out, if I go back into Unity and let it compile, it's taking a bit of time for some reason. Okay, now if I hit the play button, then what you should see is that we can shoot the enemy to kill him. So you can see I'm here and the enemy is there. He can not see me, but if I go in front of him, then he tries to reach me and I can shoot him, and yeah, that I can kill him pretty easily. So that's pretty good. And now what we are going to do is essentially make the enemy also be able to deal damage to us. So I think now seeing that we can shoot him as well, I think the speed is a bit small, so I'm going to just double both the speed and the acceleration just to make the game a bit more challenging. And what we are going to do in here, we are going to check. So first we need to get the distance. So in order to find the distance between the player, what we can do is we can say if. So first of course we need to get the distance, but before I actually add the distance, I'm going to add a one more field here, serialized field, private float range. By default this is going to be equal to okay, I'm going to make it 3. Yeah, I think it's going to be 3, and in here what I'm going to do is select the enemy, and then I'm going to make his stopping distance less than 3, something like 1.5, so the enemy does not, like, it will make it hard for him to actually attack. So yeah, so what we're going to do here is we're going to check we are going to get the distance. So in order to get the distance, what you can do is take the player's position. So player dot transform dot position minus transform dot position of this object, which means the enemy, and this returns as a vector 3, and we can just get the magnitude of that vector by saying dot magnitude, and that should give us the thing. And we can say that it is less than our range. If it is less than our range, we need to deal damage to the player. So what I'm going to do for that is basically I'm going to go under Unity, and I'm actually going to okay, we could add it to one of these scripts, but just to make it a bit more redoable, I'm going to right click here and I'm going to add in a I cannot find it, a C# script also at the top, and this is going to be called Damageable. Okay, so this Damageable will essentially contain a bunch of things. It will contain a serialized field called max health. Oh, sorry, private float max health, which by default will be 100. I'm just going to remove the two namespace, and another one called default health, which I'm also going to make 100 by default. So this will determine the actual length health at the start, and then a private float called health. And now what we're going to do in the start function method is start. So I'm going to just add a method. We're going to say health is equal to default health, and in the and then we are going to say private void update. We are going to say if health. So if health is greater than max health, then health is equal to max health. So this will essentially clamp the health to the max health, so that whenever we change it, it never goes above the max health. And here we are going to add in a private void called on damage. Okay, this is actually going to be public. So this function will essentially do damage. And if I go under my enemy, you can see we have got exactly that function. It's called take damage, but that's it. Maybe we will just copy the whole function, I guess. And I'm going to actually just remove this function from here and instead move it inside of the damageable class. So now we have got a system for damaging that we can use anywhere. So we don't want this destroy game object right now. I'm just going to remove it for now. I will show you how to add it later using because uh, different game objects might have different behaviors and the enemy dies, so we will use something called events to handle those, but for now I'm just going to remove that. Okay, so this works. We have got a damageable class. So now we can add this class to our player and enemy objects and use that instead. So first of all, what I'm going to do is go ahead and select my player object, and I'm going to drag a damageable onto it. uh, okay, it's giving me an error. Okay, here, all right. We still have got an error in the enemy script, and of course, yeah. So when it's less than range, what we need to do is we need to say player dot get component of type all right. I think we will need to change this to a curly brace thing, and I will like need to do this. So damageable, called damageable, is equal to player dot get dot player dot get component damageable. All right, and we are going to say if damageable is not equal to null, then we're going to damageable dot take damage, and the damage is going to be determined by a damage. And what damage exactly? So we are going to have in here a serialized field float damage, and this is by default going to be something like 10. Okay. Oh, by the way, one thing is that you can actually make these a single one if you want using this, which is I think kind of better sometimes. I don't really know. I mean, it's up to you. But if I go under Unity and let it compile, then it doesn't still. Okay. So now we need to fix this as well. So here we are going to say if enemy not equal to null, we are going to say damageable. Damageable is equal to enemy dot get component damageable, and then we are going to say if damageable is not equal to null, we are going to say damageable dot take damage, and give it the damage that we have got, which okay, we have got a damage field here. So if I go under here, our damage is by the way 10. Oh, it's 20, sorry. Okay, so that works. Now if I were to add in a damageable script to this, then it would work. And I can also select my enemy, and I can add a damageable to that as well, and hopefully nothing should break. So of course I shouldn't be able to kill the enemy now, but no exceptions yet. And if I go in front of him, and you can see he's getting a lot closer. I think 1.5 is a bit too much. Okay, this is certainly getting very fast. The acceleration should be lower, I think. The speed is good, but the acceleration is a bit too much, and this enemy is literally going to okay, so if I just go in front of here, okay, 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 okay. All right. So yeah, that's a bit too fast, but you can see that the basic thing is working. It's saying player received 10 damage, new health is 0, and he kills me pretty quick. So yeah, now we need to add a system for handling health because and also for delaying the enemy's attack. All right. So how can we add the death now? For the death functions, what I will use, as I said before, is something called an event, and an event is basically a function. So it's like a function, but instead of being just a plain function, it's not just a plain function, but instead it's a variable that is like a function. So you basically you have an event, and you can attach as many functions as you want to it, called callbacks, and whenever the or listeners, and whenever that event is triggered or invoked, all those listeners and callbacks will be called. So this is a really great way, and you might prefer to do something more inheritance based, like having a separate class for that or something like that. But that would be a bit too complicated, so we will just use events, which will be really extensible as well. So how can we do that? I'm going to open this up in Visual Studio now, and you can see this is our good old Damageable class, and here I'm going to add another serialized field. Now this is going to be of type Unity event, and for that you need to use a Unity engine dot event namespace. Okay, and in here we are going to have a variable of type Unity event called event. I'm just going to call it on death event. Okay, and this is it. So that's pretty much it. And what we are going to do now in here, whenever the death event happens, we are going to say on death event dot invoke, which should call all of the listeners related to that. Now this is a CLI field, so we can actually add those listeners inside of Unity. So for that, I'm going to first add the actual listeners. I'm going to go under my enemy class, and I'm going to create a public. It's important that it is a public. I'm going to create a public function here called on death. And when that happens, this function is going to do, I'm just going for a single line arrow function, and this is going to be just going to destroy the game object. By the way, do note that you need to use game object here. Using this will cause the component to be destroyed and not the game object. So this enemy will basically be removed from the enemy object, but the object will stay there. So we don't want that, so destroy game object, not destroy this. So if I open up Unity now, I'm going to select my enemy object, and you can see that we have got this on death event here, which contains a list. Now this list, if I add an element to it, the reason it's a list because we can add as many listener or callbacks as we want. So it's really nice to work with this kind of thing, and it's really flexible as well. So what I'm going to do here is go under here, and in this none object panel, I am going to drag my enemy script. Now in here in the function, you need to select it, and then you can select the class that the function is contained in, which is of course the enemy. You can also call the game object general function like set active, but I'm going to go under enemy, and in here you can see the own death function, and I'm going to just select that. And now if I hit the play button, what you should see is that if I shoot the enemy, then he dies after his health reaches 0. But if I actually play and again, and then I go in front of the enemy, then even though my health is 0, nothing happens to me because the function doesn't have anything associated with it. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I think let me just reduce the speed to 6. I'm going to leave the acceleration at 16 and change the speed to 12. Okay, so now I'm going to go back into Visual Studio, and I'm going to go under player movement, and in here I am going to add another function here for the players on death function. So I'm going to also call this on death, and make sure it's public void on death. Oh, sorry, on death. And what this does is now what should happen here on that we of course want to show that screen or something, but of course we don't have that right now, so I'm just going to exit the game. Now the proper way of doing this is to use the application dot quit method, which is great, but it really doesn't work because it only quits the game in the built version, not in the not it doesn't quit the editor. Now I'm going to just show you the way to quit the editor, and later we can program the program a way to handle both of those at once maybe. So for now, in order to set that, you need to say, you can use the Unity editor namespace, but I'm going to just type it in here instead of using it. Unity editor dot editor application dot is playing, and you can set that to false. Okay, which should essentially be the same as pressing the play button after, for stopping the game. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So if I go under here and I hit play, okay, no, of course not. We need to go under the player and then add a event here, and then add the, oh, by the way, I added this to the player movement script, so I think it's of course it makes a bit more sense to have another script for this, but I'm just going to add this to the shooting script. Okay, so I'm going to drag the shooting here, I'm going to drag, okay, let it compile. Okay, I'm going to drag the shooting script in this object, and then for the function, we are of course going to select the onDeath function. Now, if I hit play right now, then what you should see is that if I just go in front, he's still not detecting me. Okay, and the game immediately stops because he's dealing a bit too much damage. Okay, so now we are going to look at how we can make him delay his damage. Now for that we are going to use, you guessed it, coroutines. So for that I'm going to open a Visual Studio, and you can see we used a coroutine here for the shooting thing. So I'm going to go under the animator.cs now, and here I'm going to create a coroutine basically, so a private I enumerator. Of course we need to use system.collections for this, so using system.collections in order to use I enumerator. Okay, I enumerator, and this is going to be called it's going to be called attack delay, attack, okay, attack timer, or maybe attack delay makes a bit more sense. And I'm going to have a float here. Okay, this is not actually going to take anything. You can have arguments in these kind of things, by the way. And we are going to yield return new wait for seconds, and this is going to be equal to a attack delay variable, which we currently do not have. So I'm going to go up here and add in a serialized field, and this is just going to be a private float called attack delay is equal to by default let's make it 0.3, and also I just like having private mentioned explicitly. Alright, with that done, what we are going to do is have a variable here, so a private bool can attack, and then in here we are going to, when we are actually doing this, we are going to have another condition here basically, which checks if we can attack. I think I'll just move it to that line. Alright, so this basically only will attack if we can attack, and by default the can attack variable will be true in the start. Okay, or maybe alright, that we will just set it to true in the start method is equal to true. Okay, and in here in the attack delay function, what we do is we set can attack to false, and then we wait for that seconds, and then we set can attack to true again, and that should actually work. So if I open up Unity, let it compile, and if I play, it should work. So if I hit play, then hopefully the enemy will be a little more tolerant, I guess. And he kind of still immediately just tried to kill me. But if I select my enemy, then you can see that the attack delay does exist, and if I increase it, because let me see if there is anything wrong in here. Okay, of course we are not even using the coroutine, so that kind of makes no sense. So we are going to start coroutine attack delay. Okay, that should work. So if I go in here, it's still compiling. Okay, if I go in here and I am going to stop playing, and I'm going to change this attack delay back to 0.3, and let's try it out. Hopefully it works now. So if I go in front of him, you can see that he is attacking me and he does manage to kill me even, but it's really not that harsh. And I'm going to leave the attack delay at that, but I'm going to reduce the damage to 5. So that's pretty good, and this is pretty much it for this video. So just to show you what we have got, and if I go in front of him, he attacks me and that does damage, and you can see my health is now 95, and I can shoot him to try to kill him, and that works. So yeah, this is turning into quite an interesting game now. And in the next video, we will actually focus on adding three major things. Firstly is an indicator for when the player is damaged. We will add a blood splash kind of effect. And the second is an indicator for when of course, a death screen. So when the player dies, there should be a death screen instead of the game just stopping out of nowhere. And then we are going to also add a health bar so the player can see his current health, and maybe a health text as well. So yeah, I will see you in the next video, and bye.